Okay, so welcome. Some of you probably know me, other people may not know me, but let me just introduce myself very briefly. Tony White, veteran of animation, and I've got to a stage in my life where I really want to give back my knowledge. Now, the world that I animated in and the world that I did all my stuff in doesn't really exist anymore, not the same world. However, the one thing that I've learned in 50 plus years of being in the industry does still exist under the surface. In other words, most of you guys, although this is a drawing for animation class, really the exercises we're going to do here are to improve your animation. And you can improve your animation whether you're doing 3D, 2D, stop frame, puppet, you know, whatever, claymation, whatever, by learning the principles of movement. And the principles of movement are only really successful if your poses are really good. And so the knowledge that I feel I want to give back to the world right now through classes like this and my courses is the things that underpin everything. They underpin technology, they underpin techniques and the materials you use and everything, because the core principles of movement exist everywhere, whatever form of animation. In fact, whatever form of motion in the world, if you look deeply enough, you'll see the core principles of movement that I talk about existing in the world around us. And that's what really drawing for animation is all about. It's probably better explained as observational gesture drawing. Let me there we go. So yeah, it's called observational gesture drawing. And again, I welcome you to it and thank you for joining me. This is kind of a dry run. I intend to establish this every first Wednesday of the month, as I've got here. I'm jumping ahead of my own notes here. Or if you guys, if the majority of people want another day and another time, depending on what it is, I can probably do that as well. Really, the bottom line is it's the first something at the moment, Wednesday of the month at 10 o'clock, 10 a.m. Pacific time. But if the body of opinion says, oh, I'd much rather do it this day or this time, then I can definitely look at that. And you should post that either in, well, actually, you should post it into the Animators Sketch Club site and let me know. These classes are specifically to introduce our Drawing for the Month competition, our drawing challenge each month. And it's really in doing those challenges that was really the purpose of me way back setting up the Animators Sketch Club, is to help people get better at animation. And the best way of getting better at animation is by improving your observation. I'm going to jump ahead of my notes right now. No, I'm not. And it's better by developing your observation and your analysis, developing your animator's eye. In other words, seeing things from an animator's perspective, not just the surface of things that everyone goes through in life, but see what's beneath the surface, analyze it, and then communicate it with gesture drawings. And I tend to, with my courses, I put a time limit on that because I really want to crunch your brain cells into really observing, thinking fast, and doing it. And that's really the best way of going. So it's not really a drawing class in the sense that I'm going to teach you how to draw, or I'm going to criticize or comment on your drawing ability. Really, if you do stick figures, it's fine. Because we're dealing with observation and interpretation of observation in the best way you can. So I'm not judging anyone on drawing abilities. So this is a class not as a drawing class where we teach anything like that, but it's more a class where whatever skills you have, you bring them to the table and I teach you how to use your observational skills and your interpretation skills. And I give you exercises that will hone that. And that's the idea of this course and my other courses. Okay, the session we're going to be doing will be taken from my drawing warm-up exercises that are contained in my new book, Animation Masterclasses from Pencils to Pixels. This, I believe, is the cover design of it, but I haven't had confirmation from the publisher yet that this is the design, but I think this is the design. And I'll let you know in due course whether it is. But the course is based on, I run a 4-module Tuesday night live class, and there's 4 modules, 12 classes per module every Tuesday night for 2 hours. The first module of 12 is basically the core principles of movement using traditional 2D animation techniques. Now, I've always taught it traditional, i.e. pencil and paper, but this next one I'm doing is actually going to be digital 2D. In other words, hand-drawn using iPad tablets or whatever form that you guys or the students want to use to do the exercises I'm setting. But I'm teaching it from my iPad using rough animator software, which I think is amazing, and it's $5. So you can't complain about that. So, and if you don't have an iPad, that's okay, because rough animator works on other platforms, including desktop computers. And anyway, the exercises I teach can be done 2D, 3D claymation if you want to, as long as you show me you understand the movement principles we're talking about. Anyway, module 1 is that. Module 2 is teaching more core principles of movement, but using Moho. In other words, rigged digital 2D characters. And we'll go through that. Now, none of my courses I'm teaching software, none of them. I'm teaching core principles of movement, but using software to communicate those principles in a much quicker way than I could normally. In the old days, in my world days, you would sit as an apprentice at my shoulder, or as I did at the shoulders of Ken Harris or Art Babbitt or Richard Williams, and I learn at their shoulder, and you do it just by trial and error. And I apprenticed for 18 months with Richard Williams before he let me touch anything in animation that goes on the screen. But it really is the best way of learning. But the second best way of learning is by doing what I try to do using software, fast software techniques. Third module is about pre-production. I want my students to develop their film ideas. And on the 4th module, they actually complete their film ideas. So somebody goes in through the 4 modules knowing nothing and comes out having made a short film. And when I say short film, we're talking 30 seconds short film, just enough to understand all the principles. Now, I'm not really selling my courses here, but I'm leading you through to understand that the Animation Masterclasses is 48 courses or classes within the book, and each one is taken from my 4-module course. So that's where it all comes from. So the book reflects that and really is now going to become the textbook of all my courses. And at the beginning of every one of the 48 classes, there's a drawing warm-up session, and that's effectively what we're doing here. All right. So I just wanted to clarify that. And just so you can get a sneak peek, these are just printer proofs, PDFs. This is what chapter 2 looks like, the warm-up gesture drawing. You can see a photograph I've included in the book, and I explain how my process of doing gesture drawings, and I'm going to go over that in a minute. But these will show you just how the book feels. At the very beginning of each session, there is a drawing session where you guys, readers, will actually, I trust that they will time themselves, because they're usually 3-minute exercises. And the best way of learning as today is by doing it in 3 minutes and being disciplined, okay? But this gives you an idea, and that the drawing on the top right is by one of my students, Tina Brunn, who is probably the best student I've ever had for doing gesture drawings. She's better than me than doing. I'm not particularly a good artist, to be honest. I just know the tricks to make it all work, and I certainly know the movement tricks. But she's an amazing gesture drawing artist, really, really impressive. And I just wanted to also explain that beyond this class, you should really pick up doing gesture drawings yourself, observational gesture drawings, looking at life, looking at objects, looking at people, and very quickly capturing what you see. So if you're traveling on a bus, a train, or any public transport, on a plane, or just sitting in a coffee bar, sitting anywhere, have a little sketchbook with you, because if you intend to be an animator, you really need to do this. This is like a pianist does, 10-finger exercises before they do a concert. They warm their fingers up, they warm their reactions up. And that's really what gesture drawing, observational gesture drawing, is all about. And the bottom part of the right page, you can see I just take a little yellow post-it note, sticky note pad around with me sometimes, and just do quick drawings of things I see, pictures I see. You know, when you're going through Google Images or you're going through Facebook or anything, there's some really cool images, and I try to very quickly capture them just as an exercise to keep my animator's eye, focus. All right, so in beyond that, for some reason, there we go. My buttons are not working on the keyboard, so I'm having to click on the screen, which is annoying. Anyway, how do we do observational gesture drawings? Well, everyone is going to have their own way of doing it. The bottom line is whatever works for you at whatever level works for you, it doesn't matter. If you do stick figures, as I said, if it works for you and you understand what you're looking at and communicate it as a sketch, it can be, you know, I'm not saying you do Rembrandt drawings or anything, because they're all time linked and you'll never do it. Not even Rembrandt could do it. But if you've got limited drawing ability and you're kind of nervous about drawing gesture drawings fast, just use stick figures. Really, just use stick figures. I use my Arnie character, and I'll explain that in a minute, to get things down really quickly. Okay, so the bottom line is what we're talking about here with observational gesture drawing is, number one, observation, number two, interpretation, and number three, execution. And what that means is observation is looking at an object or a person from the real world to use it as reference for your animation poses. In other words, you're not doing drawings that are your animation, you're getting reference and understanding for when you do your animation, because animation requires perfect poses. If your poses are not good, your animation is never going to be good. So what we're doing now is training your observation. We're doing real life research by observing things in the real world and then interpret it then. So interpretation, working out in your own mind how that object or person is positioned, scaled, related to the environment it's in, and entirely based on your observation. All right, I'm going to come up with a favorite phrase of mine in a minute, but it's based on your observation. Two people will see things slightly differently. That's okay, because everyone puts their own stamp on what they do. Everyone has their own eye for seeing things and their own way of animating, okay? I know if you're working on a big production, you've got to make it look like everyone else's, and the software to many, many degrees makes that possible, or the models you've got to work with rigged characters. But generally, each animator will have its own style. In the old days, they talked about observing, let's say a Disney film, observing which animator did a particular scene. And quite often, the old guys used to tell me this. I mean, I trained with some of the great Disney greats when they were alive, Warner Brothers greats. And they all told me, oh, I can tell Frank Thomas's drawing by the hands, or Milt Kahl drawing by the hands. I mean, apart from the fact they were genius artists in their own right, because everyone draws what they're used to seeing themselves. And if you've got big hands, you'll tend to make your characters have big hands. If you've got tiny hands, your characters will tend to have tiny hands. It's a weird thing. Even if you're working from a model sheet, your personal observation and interpretation will relate to your own personal experience. And that's why I'm saying there's no one way of doing anything, but these guidelines might help you find your way. Okay, so, and then execution, communicate what you see and interpret to yourself and others in the quickest yet most accurate way you can. In other words, gesture sketches. And that's what we're talking about, gesture sketches. And that's really what I want to get across to you in this, doing the work we're doing here. Forget finessing, forget shading, forget pure features, forget everything. You're trying to get an essence down, and the quickest way you can do it is through gesture drawing. And therefore, the gesture drawings don't have to be perfect. They kind of have to be perfect in terms of your analysis of the scale and proportions, because they have to be consistent and relate to the real world. But they don't have to be perfect photographic reproductions of what you're looking at. Not at all. And that's the worst thing you can do with the time limits that get set on you. Okay, so to give you an essence of what I'm talking about here, This is something I did a few years ago. Remember back in the days when we had live in-classroom classroom, before the pandemic, before everything, we used to do in-classroom teaching. And to some degree, I love that. But in other degrees, I actually love online teaching because I can cover much more ground and I get better results in general with students. But I kind of like the performance of in-classroom. And this is a video I made a few years ago just to promote one of my in-classroom drawing for animation courses. Maybe someone among you has taken these courses before and it might be familiar, but in showing you this short video, you'll get some ideas of how I approach some gesture drawings. There's other things involved in this video, which is more about the principles of movement, but don't worry about it. You'll get an essence of what I'm talking about with fast gesture drawing. What I was saying, a lot of employers said to me, when I said to them, what are students lacking when they come to you? And pretty much all of them said to me traditional art skills or a sketchbook. So that said, if you're aiming to go to another college like Cal Arts or something like that, do your research, find what they're really looking for and tailor your sketchbook for that. I would actually exaggerate, really exaggerate that curve, and I'd have the feet down here, and I'd probably lock the arm in here, and I'd push that arm out further there, and maybe I'd tilt the head back a little bit, and if I take that measurement as 1 unit, it means the shoulders are that unit. I noticed his right shoulder is higher, the left one is lower. I noticed the spine is in this direction. Then if I take the head unit measurement again, 1, 2, 2.5. The body's about 2.5 of those. So 1, 2, 2.5. That's where the pelvis is. And again, this hip is higher. Again, I'm just very quickly measuring out. So what I'm saying is you're not trying to do realistic drawing, you're trying to do accurate drawing. You're trying to draw what you see rather than what you think you see. I was talking about last week is balance, center of gravity. When 2 feet are on the ground, the center of gravity is going to be somewhere between those 2 feet. You can't see these 2 feet, but they're clearly both on the ground here. Whereas this guy has got 1 foot off the ground, but because he's making a move forward, he's out of balance, but that's deliberate because he's letting his body mass motivate the velocity of his move. But seriously, you don't really learn it from books anyway. You learn it by doing it, or knowing someone who knows how to do it, who shows you a mental skill. That's the best way. If your poses are not good, your animation's never going to be good. And each pose has to tell a story. Whatever the intention of the story is, that pose has to be so good. You look at when you do a pose, there's a right and a wrong way of posing something from an animation perspective. And you've always got to put yourself in the mind of the audience when you're doing a pose. And if you check back on all the Disney classic movies of the past, you'll see this is true through and through, and it's a fundamental principle. That when you do a pose, make sure the silhouette of that pose is really good. The story, sketching their character holding a skull. If you're the camera and I'm holding the skull like that, you're seeing the skull and me behind it. That's a really bad pose. But if you see that in silhouette, you get the whole thing clearly defined, the skull, the arm, and me. But if I do it, but really you're looking for angles, you're looking for proportions, you're looking for relationship, like that angle, you know, what's the angle from the shoulder to the wrist, what's the basic body shape, are the shoulders level or is one up, what's the angle of the head, what's the eye line, and what's the relationship of all these things. Try to keep when you're analyzing footage, for instance, to do a picture action, this is the quick kind of gesture drawing you need to do. Now, I took probably more than 3 minutes on these. I probably took 4 or 5. But essentially, you're capturing the motion as quickly as you can, not trying to draw photographically what you're seeing. You're just don't literally copy the pose, copy the message of the pose, the story that the pose is telling, but just push it even further. Just, if he's got his head's down in relation to his shoulders, but you take it even further, that's... You get a nice little snap when it hits the ground. We'll talk about that in a minute. And you'll get a slight stretch when it's going up and coming down, and then it reverts back to a circle. And then all the shadow. Now the shadow is really good if you're ever animating a bouncing character or any character that's in contact with the ground and loses contact with the ground. If you use a shadow to accompany that action, it will give much more grounding for it. It will feel like there's contact made when the shadow touches the character, and then when it goes away, there's a separation. It emphasizes the bounce. So in other words, when the ball hits the ground, it bounces and comes up very fast, but as it gets near the top, gravity is pulling on it, so it's going to go up fast and then slow down. And then at the top of the bounce, for a split second, it's going to stop, and then on the way down, it's going to accelerate. So it decelerates on the way up and accelerates on the way down. And you can see, okay, because when it goes to twinning, it looks fake and wooden. Especially in animation. Remember, in animation is a caricature of reality, so you have to extend even the most obvious things. So if you are doing a jump like that, I would suggest that you have one arm going up just a little bit ahead of the other one. Even though ostensibly they're going up together, they're going up differently. And then all right, so some of it doesn't apply to what we're doing, but some of it does. And I wanted to get you a feel for the way I think about things, the way you saw those little, what I call skeleton drawings of how I'm interpreting a gesture drawing or a pose that I'm building a gesture drawing from. And I wanted to give you an overall feel. Some of the other principles of movement and things like that I deal with in other classes, but I think it just gave you an idea of how I approach gesture drawing. The bottom line is the phrase I mentioned earlier: draw what you see, not what you think you see. And that was given to me when I was a student, not learning animation, because they didn't have animation classes in my day. But I did a 3-year program, and then I was given an extension year, 1 year independent study with the illustrator Ralph Stedman on illustration. And Ralph used to take us for life drawing classes and basically life drawing classes, but he'd also take us out into the world and we draw things like the London docks. When they existed in London, there were incredible docks and cranes and boats and barges, everything. He'd take us out and we'd draw, and he would drum into us: draw what you see, not what you think you see, because our mind, we think we're so clever with our imagination. Now, imagination's really good in coming up with ideas, but once you want to exercise the ideas, you want to switch off that imaginary, intuitive part of your brain and say, okay, now it's a mechanical exercise. Now I want to get this pose. Now I want to get this gesture, whatever it is. I need to learn how to do that, because your imagination will never be as good as what's really happening in the real world. And that's what this is about. So this is what I'm saying: draw what you see, but not what you think you see. So every line you put into a drawing, you must think about it. Look at your subject, measure it out, angle it correctly, and think about it. Don't just put down, oh yeah, he's got an arm up and an arm down, just draw that. Don't. Look at how he's got an arm up and how he's got an arm down. What are the angles in relation to each other? How wide from the body is it? Is it narrow to the body? Is one wider than the other from the body? Things like that. Look and see what you're drawing and then communicate that. Okay, so my suggested process of doing a gesture drawing, and yours could be different, is number one, draw the inner skeleton first. I'm talking about timed drawings. Think of when you do these 3-minute exercises in a minute, you'll know what it feels like to do 3-minute exercises, all right? Sometimes they're much harder and faster than you think they are. If you're a fast drawer, that's better, you know, for you. But if you're a slow drawer, then they're going to crunch you. So first thing you do in a skeleton, just look at the lines. Remember, I was doing the drawing on the board in that video I showed you. I just drew lines and angles and little dots and things like that. So I built the inner skeleton first. Then once you've got that built and you've got the proportions right, the angles right, everything, straight lines are easy to get all those things right and fast. Once you've got them, two, flush out joints and with geometric structures. I'll show you in a minute what I mean by that. But basically, I put circles for the like shoulders, elbows, wrists, and then join them up. You know, I put them onto my skeleton, draw a little circle for the arms or the legs, draw bigger circles for the top of the torso and bottom of the torso. I draw a circle for the head and connect the neck to it, etc. But flush it out a little bit with more geometric shapes. And then if you've still, and if you don't have time left after that, if 3 minutes are up, that's it. But that's good because you've got everything you need to know to base your next animation pose on, okay? But if you do have time, if you're a fast worker, fast drawer, 3, put some more flesh on the bones. So what do I mean by any of that? Well, here's an example on the left, Tina Brun, the student I told you about. That's her, left is her skeleton poses. She worked out the basic shapes and directions of the body, where everything was in relation to each other very quickly. I mean, like seconds to do that. Probably a bit longer with 2 characters, but you know what I mean, but really fast. And then start investing by putting more circles in. You can see the underlying, she's kind of done a bit of a clean up, fleshed out final thing as well. But beneath it, you can see on top of the skeleton, she started putting circles and things. And I tend to put for the joints, as I say, the smaller circles around, and I can't show you because my cursor doesn't show up, but where the knees are, I'll put little circles, and the ankles, I'll put little circles, join them up with tubes. And I start fleshing out the skeleton that way. And then this is a different artist, but in a final thing, if you're designing a character, this is what a final fleshing out. You probably can't do this in 3 minutes, but if you were doing a character design or a job, I still use that process, skeleton first, flesh out geometric shapes, then put the flesh on, put the final detail on, all right? This, for instance, any of you who know Joanna Quinn, probably the best living artist animator anywhere on the world planet right now. This is one of her gesture drawing sketchbooks. I put it in the book, and just to show you how fast she works when she's roughing it, but it's all based on real life observation. She's learning how things move. She's not necessarily drawing everything perfectly, but she's got the flow or the essence or the spirit of what she's looking at, and that's all the information she needs. And then she'll, here's another sequence she did back in 2012 for the British Animation Awards. Again, this is not finished, cleaned up animation, but by drawing loosely like this and roughly like this, you can get so much down so much faster. So that's what I want to encourage you to do with gesture drawing. Don't try and do perfect drawing. Don't do photographic drawing. Get the information you need, and that's all you need. These are my really, really fast, simple sketches, 1 minute drawings, very quickly to capture the poses of different live action images I'm looking at. And this is what I'm trying to get you, whatever your version of doing things this fast, that's what we're talking about. Sometimes I'll do a bit more accurate. When I clean up my animation, this character walking with a staff, I based it on the guy on, I shot a video of a colleague of mine, and very bad video, very poor, but it was enough I could understand all the poses and the leg positions and everything. And so I used that reference to get the walk, and then I exaggerated the walk. I pushed it even further, and it came out really well. Anyone who's seen this walk will know I'm even proud of this walk because it was a really good one that I did. But it's all based on live action footage. And this is what I normally do with my gesture drawing. Even if I'm not animating this particular, this is Arnie, my character. He's my go-to for everything. But if I'm doing fast gesture drawings, I'll draw Arnie, because Arnie is pretty much anatomically sound, apart from the circular head, compared with any other figurative work I do. But it allows me to very quickly get down the gestures. You can see where I put circles in for the joints and the geometric blocking of it. That's all I'm talking about with gesture drawing. And sometimes with quick gesture drawings, you can push perspective. This is examples, looking up and looking down on a character. Now, it's easy with Arnie because he's got a circular head, but if you try and do it with a real character, realistic looking human character, you're going to struggle a lot more. But it's okay, because the effect of if you're animating this kind of perspective, it's okay because the audience will accept it. Even if your drawing is not perfect, they'll get an idea of the forced perspective. And animation is all about forcing things, by the way. It's not just copying things, it's observing things, interpret to them, and then expressing them in a way that you express the quality of it. And with, for instance, looking up character, exaggerate everything. Looking down character, exaggerate anything. Any pose you do, exaggerate it, because animation is a caricature of reality. It's not reality. All right, and this was an actual animated sequence I did. I haven't got it with me. I could show you another time, but this is me trying to work out a walk cycle with a looking down perspective. And I animated the ground beneath in perspective as well. It was crazy, but the animation came out really well. But basically, this is all I did to get my ideas down quickly and fast and get the movement correct. Then I just went straight to cleanup and did the final version. But this is all you need when you're doing gesture drawing. I even did gesture drawings of an animated chair I did once. I was teaching a course at Cornish in Seattle, and I gave the students an exercise, animate a chair. And just to show them, I just started doing gesture drawings. We'd give them about 4 minutes, 5 minutes, and I'd move the chair and do another one. Well, I went along and did it with them, because if I'm going to inflict pain on others, I want to feel it myself. And I think it's only fair I did. So this is just some of my gesture drawings for a chair. And then every drawing, I'm not saying this is great drawing, these are great characters, but I want to use it just to express the idea every drawing must tell a story, especially if your drawings are for animation keys. Every drawing must tell a story, because if your keys don't work, if each drawing that in your key positions doesn't tell the story you're trying to communicate, your animation never will. You can put all fancy in-betweens, you can put all effects on it, music, all kinds of bells and whistles to it. If your key poses are not working, your key gesture poses are not working, it's never going to work. So think of every drawing you do in animation, every key pose is all about telling a story. It's really important you tell a story. Okay, so now let's get to work. Draw the following timed drawings onto one sheet of paper, please. That is if you're submitting it into our monthly challenge. This assignment is our monthly challenge this month in the Animated Sketch Club. So if you're going to submit it, I want there's 4 drawings, and I want you to put, roughly block out your paper into 4 and do 1 drawing in each quarter. 1 sheet of paper, work fast but accurate. Accuracy is more important than drawing ability or finish of the drawing. And don't cheat. The real learning of observational gesture drawing is to make it real, not polished. In other words, I know that after this class is over, you can go back and spend 10 minutes on a drawing, and then, you can, and then submit those drawings. Please don't do it, because number one is you won't learn anything about yourself, and I certainly won't learn anything about you if you want me to give feedback on anything. So, be honest, because that's the only way you're going to learn. So you're going to do 4 3-minute poses on the theme physical exercise. As I said, roughly divide your paper up into 4 equal parts and do each of the 4 gesture drawings in each quarter of your page, because when you submit it, I want you just to submit 1 file, not 4, okay? All right, so, and I've recorded this on video because I prefer to do that whenever I do any instruction or illustration of anything. I prefer to put it on video because technical stuff happens and it goes wrong midway and you can get into trouble. So I pre-recorded everything when I do something like this, and that's what you're going to see right now. So if you're all ready, you've had a long preamble, I'm going to start it right now. Physical exercise. Everyone does some kind of physical exercise in one way or another. House chores alone are part of this activity, as is physical exercise in the gym or out in the backyard. We tend to take these menial things for granted, but it pays animators well to look at them again with a fresh eye. The following 4 gesture drawing exercises will help. 3-minute pose, washing the car. Get ready, steady, go. Notice the body angles, the angles of the shoulders in relation to the angles of the hips. They're kind of counterpoise there. Notice how the elbow of the left arm relates to the knee of the left leg and the right leg. Notice the angle of the head and the angle of the arm, and generally the balance of the whole position. One minute. Two minutes, 1 minute left. $30. 10 seconds. And stop. Okay, for our second pose, 3-minute pose, we're going to study a kid climbing. So get ready, get steady, go. Now, we've all seen kids climbing, we've all seen humans climbing, but we never really study the poses because there's an extreme amount of tension and weight displaced here. So you can see the hands are holding onto the wall for the strength and stability of the pose. The foot is also supporting, but if we were to see this moving, we'd see the body weight shift from one leg to the other. At the moment, all the weight's on the 2 hands and the right foot, and the left foot is probing, but to go higher or further, there would be a shift in the body mass. So at the moment, however, we're looking at a frozen frame. So look at the angle of the body, look where the tension points are, left arm mainly, and right leg. Okay, angle of the head, angle of shoulders and hips. All these things go so much into defining a pose, telling a story. 1 minute. 2 minutes, 1 minute left. Thirty seconds. Ten seconds. And stop. Okay, so our third 3-minute pose is dig in the yard. Again, very commonplace occurrence, but we never study what really goes on in the body. And so this one is going to give us a clue, at least for one person's position. So get ready, get steady, go. Again, look where the weight's distributed here. It's on the front foot. See, the body weight is shifted forward to give more purchase or more support on the ground, while the arms dig the shovel into the ground. But at the moment, we're frozen pose. So just look at angles, look at the shoulder angles, the hip angles, again, where the body mass is mainly balanced on that left foot, and the angle of the head. And 1 minute. Two minutes, 1 minute left. Thirty seconds. Ten seconds. And stop. Okay, so final one, fourth pose, 3-minute pose, washing windows. Again, another commonplace activity, but I guess we've never really looked at what's going on. So let's get going with this one, the final one of this set. Ready, steady, go. Again, it's all about balance. So where is the balance? Where is the weight on this pose? Well, it's over that left leg. See how the weight is on, look at the foot, how it's bending around that rung of the ladder, and look at the center of gravity of the body is coming directly down that leg from the waist area all the way down on that leg. And the stretch of the left arm is not a strength position, it's a guidance position. It's just being used to wash the window, but the weight is over that left leg. The right leg is out, balancing, counterbalancing, in fact, and the right hand is for steadying. But look at the angles, hips, shoulders, arms, legs. One minute. Two minutes, 1 minute left. Thirty seconds. Ten seconds. And stop. Okay, that's it. 4 very different poses, but giving 4 different challenges. And I think you deserve some time in the relaxation zone. So here we are. Shake the arms off, deep breaths, relax. Stress is over. You can just lay back for a minute. And I think we could reflect on what we're doing. So what we're doing is really observing things that we see every day, but opening our minds and our understandings as animators to what's really going in those poses. Because when we do animation poses, everything we're looking at right now is vitally important. Where the weight's distributed, where the balance is. You know, center of gravity defines so many things, especially if you're working with an active character like dancing or something like that. The center of gravity is constantly shifting over the points of contact on the ground, in other words, the feet. And you need to be aware of that. As we're looking at this Buddha statue right now, you can see the balance is directly down the middle, but very few of us are ever in that position of perfect stillness, perfect relaxation. So all the exercises we're doing here in Drawing for Animation are all about opening our eyes, making us aware of what we see and not what we think we see. Because the tendency for all artists, especially when drawing, is to have a preconceived idea of what we're drawing and just finesse it. But actually, we really have to look and see how much imagination we're putting into our drawings and how much actual observation and understanding we're putting into it. When I was at art school, one of my best teachers probably the best teacher I ever had on drawing or anything to do that was Ralph Stedman, the famous illustrator. And I did a year of personal study with him on illustration, and but he would take us into the life drawing class, and we'd sit there and start drawing these, what we might term pretty pictures of what we think we're looking at. But he would actually open our eyes in a very brutal but wonderful way. We'd do all these fancy drawings with shading and lighting and everything, but he would look at them and kind of frown and say, "Can I sit down for a minute?" Because we were on those artist donkeys where we were sitting down and drawing. So we'd reluctantly have to move over, and he would take over our drawing. And that was the last we ever saw of our precious drawings. He would then come in with it. He used to use a big black beauty pencil, which is really thick and as black as charcoal. And he'd start carving across our drawing stress lines and angles and things like that. So we'd end up with just a whole mass of barbed wire over our drawings. But as he did so, he didn't do it randomly. He was saying, "Look at the angle of the shoulders. You haven't got any angles on the shoulders, but that's the angle." And then he'd carve this big black line through our shoulder angles, then the spine, and then the hips, and then the legs and everything. And as I say, at the end of it, we just had one big black tangled mass of barbed wire and straight lines all over our drawing, which at the beginning, obviously, we were very precious about it and very hurt. But as we woke up, or at least for me, I don't know about other people, but as I woke up and realized what he was trying to show us, the bottom line message was, draw what you see, not what you think you see. So hopefully these drawing for animation exercises will begin to open your mind, open your eyes to what's really there. And then in knowing that and interpreting that, you'll then be able to place it into your key poses, giving you much more dynamic and more powerful storytelling poses, which can only help your animation. Okay, so I think we've had enough rest, so we can go on to the next exercise. Or if you're taking breaks between these sessions, you can go out and do whatever you want to do, but we'll be back for sure. Okay, guys, I'll stop it there because I realize once I get talking, it's very hard to shut me up, and we've gone way over the half hour I promised. So if you need to get away, get away. Okay, so now what? Sorry. The drawings you've done today are this month's drawing challenge in the Animated Sketch Club. Post them into the Animated Sketch Club group page on Facebook or the 2D Animakers network page, where there's another section of the group before the end of the month. I mean, as soon as possible, but if you really want a second shot at it, I'll give it to you, but please be honest with the timing. That's all I ask you. And then post your drawings as one file, all right, into whatever room you want to post it in. And losing my voice, I'm sorry. And I promise I'll give you, if you, any of you that have been in this class and have posted from this class, I'll give you feedback on your drawing. I'm not going to criticize your drawing ability, but I'll look at your observations and your balances and your proportions and things like that and make comments, all right? But I hope you like this. I just remind you, if anyone does want to join my classes, they start next week, next Tuesday from 6 to 8 p.m. and that's Pacific time. And if you can't make that time for the live class, I do exactly what I'm doing for this. I record the whole 2-hour class, and the next day I post it into a private classroom that I set up for enrolled students, and you can review it even up to 6 months beyond the course is finished. I leave it there so anyone can go back and refer to bits of information we share. All right. And just basically any questions and answers. If you need to escape right now, that's fine, because I've gone on too long, really. Maybe next time I'll make it an hour and then everyone be prepared. But if you've got any questions or answers, I'm happy. Unmute yourself and ask me a question. I'll happily answer it. Or if everyone wants to escape, that's okay too. I try to be adaptable. So if any of you guys have feedback, if any of you guys want a different, I've said first Wednesday of the month at 10 a.m. I do it at 10 a.m. because that's reasonable for West Coast, certainly for West Coast people, but it even takes us into Europe. It means that it's early evening there. So anyone in Europe that wants to join us can. And because I record this and my 2D Tuesday night classes, I do put it in the classroom, and anyone who can't make the live classes, by the way, and they do the remote classes where I put the recording in the next day and they work from that, they get equal feedback on their work in a different way, not live, but they get feedback, and they also get a discount on the fee. So that might be something that if you're not in the Pacific time zone, you might want to consider that. And unless I hear feedback otherwise, the first Wednesday of next month, we'll do it at 10 a.m. I'll give plenty of information of it. The recording of this class, I will put into my YouTube page, but I'll also link it to the Animator Sketch Club on both Facebook and Animakers, 2D Animakers. And so people can review it. You have time before the end of the month to do the exercise and see how it goes. But yeah, and if you want to give me feedback online, that's fantastic. Positive, negative, I'm willing to learn and I'm willing to adapt to make it work for you guys. All right. But other than that, I'm just going to say goodbye and thanks for coming and keep drawing. All right.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.